tradition within a culture is the means by which information, cultural traditions, social expectations are transmitted from one generation to another through song, through story, orally. Oral tradition tells us who we are and what is ours, and it also explains to us our origin. We embrace oral tradition not so much because it is a repository of fact, but that it seems to answer those questions that have to do about truth. It is time immemorial, and whether we have the correct times and dates and names is secondary. It's the felt truth of the story.
My real name is Badwewadung. That name is my spiritual name. I'm also known as Eddie Benton-Benai. And that's the name you'll find on all my vital statistics papers. I don't have a birth certificate, so you won't find that. But on all the records in school, driver's license, military record, that's the name you'll find. But my real name is who I really am. The Ojibwe word definition of Badwedan is related to the thunderbird spirit. And so in that relationship, then a person bearing that name is also known as a messenger, a teacher in that respect. So that's who I really am. The history of my people, the Ojibwe-speaking Anishinaabe, and all of the indigenous people of this part of the world, our history goes back many thousands of years. Our oral history would put us at the moment of creation. And the creation story indicates that the Creator, the one Creator, placed his children, the Anishinaabe people, on the earth, on this part of the earth, which means that we have absolutely no belief or lend any credibility to the Bering Straits idea. But for people who are comfortable with that, we'll not argue with that. But we know, and this is what I teach my children, my grandchildren, and soon my great-grandchildren, and all the people that I come in contact with, that the true history of the original people of this part of the world has never been written. It's been written about, but the history, the true history of our people, is recorded in our genetic memories and is acted out via our songs, our stories, our rituals, and via our original religion, which for the Ojibwe people is the lodge, the Medewin Lodge. In the lodge and within the lodge is kept the original teachings, not available in print, not available via the print media in any respect. And it's only the key to it is the language. So without the language, a person wanting to delve into that history, whether for personal or spiritual reasons, without the language, you're a very, very handicapped person in that respect. I'm very fortunate in the fact that I was born to families who did not allow the English languages to be spoken in their homes. And I grew up in that environment. I did not begin to hear the English language until about age 7. And then at that age, very, very minimally. I was not permitted to go to school until age 9. And the reason was that I sit here now at 62 years of age, and English is my second language. I speak my original language, the natural language of the Anishinaabe people, which is Ojibwe. And along with that background, then of course I heard only Ojibwe history. I was taught Ojibwe values, the rituals, the songs, the philosophy, the theology, and I was raised in that manner. I was first introduced to fasting at age 5, and every second year after that I was made to fast, and in time began to understand what that was all about and what that's for. Fasting, not today people like to use the term vision questing, but fasting is a learning process, is a learning process of meditation, of prayer, of thought, and analysis. And the Ojibwe people had developed a very keen educational system within their own culture and within their own environment. A lot of people were forced to abandon that, of course, as we got civilized. But therein lies then the absence of our history. What has replaced it but Euro-American history? Very heavy emphasis on the European peoples and their history. Well, that's what we were force-fed. And then in that force feeding, of course, we were forced to abandon our own history. And trying to replace that with somebody else's values and somebody else's history leads to largely people who have no roots, who have no bearing, and being lost in two different worlds. Losing your own culture, losing your own identity, and then not being accepted in the dominant society because you are Indian. It sets up a losing situation, and it's terrible. And Indian people are in a very tough situation. We live in a modern, industrial, contemporary society that's racing along towards its own destruction. As an ethnic group, we have the shortest lifespan of anybody in this country. Prior to 1492, we were a healthy, very wealthy nation. We didn't have Federal Reserve Bank, but we were a very wealthy nation. When you are healthy in spirit and you're healthy in body, you are wealthy. And when I say wealthy, I don't mean the laying up of riches or the accumulation of material things, but we were a very wealthy nation. The people that are now called traditional people, if you look at them as the Indian population, you'll find an absence of alcoholism, you find an absence of suicide, you find an absence of drug abuse, you find an absence of all these contemporary behaviors, negative contemporary behaviors. So, you know, when we think about history, we think about how we were prior to 1492. And you start off by saying, the Creator placed us here on this part of the world. This is our homeland. This is our roots. The earth is the mother of all living things. That's a starting point. And you have to knock out and get rid of some racist and stereotypical kinds of things. One of those being the idea that it's always been thrown around that Indian people worship a lot of gods. That is totally false. That's one of the greatest lies that were ever told by the civilizers. And it's come, and it has come down even to this age. I mean, there's young non-Indian kids in school today who believe those very same things that their grandmothers and grandfathers passed on to them. So you know, it's generational, and so the problems are generational. But when we take a look at our own history and say that we have a history on this continent that goes back 50,000 years plus, you're looking at a long period of time. And we weren't running around these woods here naked and not knowing what to eat and what made us well. We knew that very well. and the idea about the history of Wisconsin. We, the Ojibwe people, were given 7 major prophecies. 7 major prophecies, probably about 500 years prior to 1492. One of those prophecies was the coming of a light-skinned race to this land. At that time, around 850 AD, 900, we as a nation were still principally located on the eastern seaboard, around the mouth of the St. Lawrence River. And somewhere around that same period of time, we were part of a large spiritual confederacy. The Algonquin nations had a spiritual confederacy, and through that confederacy we had trading relationships with many other nations, the Seneca, the Iroquois peoples. In our oral history, it's stated very clearly that the Medewan Lodge stood side by side with the Longhouse, and neither the Longhouse nor the Medewan Lodge incurred into the other, but that there was mutual respect, as the teaching is about respect, and which is a key. We have always respected other people's beliefs and other people's way of life, and perhaps too much. Perhaps we respect it too much because, with that natural respect and with that value, we became easy marks. We became easy prey, and to the people that were coming into this part of the world from across the ocean needing land, we said there's plenty for everybody. How much do you need? And we can see the result. Today I sit on a little patch of ground here that my grandfathers and grandmothers walked upon and picked berries, and it's only by sheer might and sheer will that I've saved this little piece of our original homeland, and I'm going to save it, and I'm going to keep it in such a way that it's going to be in our hands for 7 generations from now. And that's the way that we look at everything. At what we do during our lifetimes has to reflect 7 generations into the future. When you think about that, and when you really think about that, the dominant society has no such concept. They have no such value, and I wonder. We have been together 500 and some years, and we still haven't learned enough about each other. I don't think white society knows any more about us today than they did in 1492 or whenever it was they got here, and have never bothered to learn. Only assumptions have been made, assumptions that we worship everything. Well, we do. We worship everything because everything is of the Creator. The spirit of the Creator is in these beautiful trees here. These beautiful trees are living beings. I can point out to you which one of those 2 trees are male and which one is a female. And it takes 2 of them to produce seeds that will produce more trees. But has any white people ever asked us how we can tell and what that means? No, because all those trees represent is board feet of lumber, which are marketable and dictated by Dow Jones. That's the sum total of interest to this beautiful land and to its resources. In these woods, as we look around anywhere here across the lake, in the swamps that we came by, there is medicine there that can heal cancer. There's medicine there that can heal many things. Has anybody ever asked us about it? No. Only if they want to patent it, only if they want to exploit it. We as a nation, we're still principally located on the eastern seaboard. And urging of the people to follow the setting sun, there was a prophecy of the finding of a sacred food, and it would describe to us as food that grows on water. And coming here to this part of the world, to this part of the country, the abundance of wild rice was just absolutely amazing. Every lake and every river was just absolutely overflowing with wild rice, food growing on water. That's how the migration came to its end here. And where it started from, in the mouth of the St. Lawrence River, somewhere there was a great rock formation, actually an island, that was in the shape of a great turtle. And that turtle was facing this direction. So that was the starting point, and the migration, is well recorded. People know where we were. But when we came to the land of the food growing on water, we knew that we were somewhere close. So the actual westward movement of the migration stopped at what is now Duluth, Minnesota. And high up on what is now known as Spirit Mountain, on a given daybreak, on a beautiful daybreak, they looked down upon these beautiful waters, and there was a turtle-shaped island. And nobody knows this history either, but that's the real history of it. And that island was known as Manitou Island, Spirit Island, because that's what they were looking for. Then, of course, eventually we moved on to what is now known as Madeline Island. When the Longcoats, the missionaries, they were prophesied too, the ones with the big long black robes and the big black hats carrying a book, they were prophesied too. When they began to come this way, then, this was after contact, of course, around 1580s, early 1600s. Madeline Island was the thriving spiritual center of the Ojibwe nation. That's where the sacred scrolls were taken. That's where the sacred water drum was taken. All the sacred articles that represented the migration. When it was known then that the black coats and missionaries were headed this way, there was another flurry of activity, because it was known what was going to take place, that eventually Madeline Island was going to be overrun, and that to stay there, to keep the sacred articles there, would be foolish. And so there was a mass exodus from Madeline Island. And at that time then, that's how these small bands, reservations began to be established. It was directly from Madeline Island that my grandfathers and grandmothers came to this part of what is now known as Wisconsin. And then it's from here there was another dispersal of people and clans and families, the St. Croix people, the Mole Lake people, Lac du Flambeau people. So this was kind of a secondary dispersal center of the people. But it was always on that basis. So the exodus from Madeline Island preceded the arrival of the traders and the missionaries by quite a few generations. But they really did not know it, and there's still some people today who don't who don't know it. So there's a great deal in our history that talks about Wisconsin. We knew these lands, we knew these rivers, we knew these lakes very, very well. When you couple today with the names of some of these places, for instance, Wisconsin River, that's really taken from what we named the river, Owiskasing River, the twisting, turning river. And in that description, it must have been a huge, beautiful, just an absolutely, oh God, it must have been so tremendous. It's mighty, just powerful, beautiful. And when you look around the state of Wisconsin, you see our place names in many places, and it indicates how well we knew, and how what we felt about the land, and the tall, absolutely magnificent pines that stood on these lands, or giants that had stood for centuries. And the people's tears and anguish and sadness when the civilizers came and cut them down. Those were heartbreaks that many people have still yet to recover from. But it was absolutely magnificent. You look at the history of Wisconsin, the recorded history of Wisconsin, and the size of those trees are just absolutely tremendous. And so this whole land was like that. It was fresh and teeming with game and animals, medicines, food, fruit of every description. There was no place you could be here in this part of the country and starve unless you wanted to, because there's food and medicine everywhere. So our story of Wisconsin, takes many turns. It's a spirit. We had a spiritual connection to the land. Everywhere we look, we know that our grandmothers and grandfathers are buried. And there are key points where people do not know what's there. Because we've hidden a lot of things. And as a result of that, there's a lot of distortion in history. There's a lot of distortion in the way people write about us. We haven't taken great pains to correct some of those things, because some of those distortions actually conceal something. There are many beautiful sacred places here in this part of the world, this part of the North. So our relationship, 500 and some years we've lived side by side, and I think America still has a lot to learn about us and from us. And I, for one, knowing what our true religion is, our teachings, living them to the best of my ability, know that someday our white brothers are gonna come. They're gonna ask, how can we live in peace? And I, for one, can articulate the message that was given to us generations and generations ago, even before the arrival of the light-skinned race. One of the prophecies was this, in very simple words. The prophet, the spirit that spoke to the people, said to the people, and that's us, the Anishinaabe people, said, "You shall know the truth of these things when these things shall come about." And you know what he described? Here's the words. In the language, it sounds like this. In Guding, e jiwebak, oma king, the manadad nibe, minoagigo, anga kashkaasin da amwat. And in those words, the English interpretation is this: that you shall know the truth of these teachings and the truth of these prophecies when the time shall come that the rivers will run with poison and the fish become unfit to eat. Has that happened? You think it's untrue? It was prophesied. It was prophesied then too, that in the time of the seventh fire, a new people would rise up. And when I first heard that, I thought perhaps it meant only Indian people. But I realize now that what was prophesied is that there's got to be a new people, because the people that we're dealing with now are going to destroy the earth, And along with that destruction is going to be the destruction of all of us. And so there's got to be, and there is slowly rising a new people that will begin to appreciate each other for who they are, for their differences, for the differences in the way they look at things and the way that they think about things. And therein, to me, is the salvation of humanity. Otherwise, it ain't. Otherwise, we're gone. There ain't going to be no seventh generation for any of us. So our story, it's a very touching story, very sad story in some respects. Yet it's beautiful too. It's beautiful and lasting because in spite of the fact that the lumber companies came in here and cut it all down almost, we've still survived. These trees are never going to be cut down. The wind might take them down if the Creator sees fit to blow them down, but there's no lumber company ever going to take them down. And they must all stop just like that.